They thought humans were weak, until they saw what we could really do. The Galactic Senate Hall was a place of history, power, and authority. It was where the greatest species of the universe convened to discuss war, peace, and the fate of civilizations. Today, however, it was nothing more than a stage for mockery. At the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by towering alien dignitaries, stood Captain James Reed, the sole human representative. His uniform was crisp, his posture unwavering, yet his face remained unreadable as the laughter echoed around him. Seated at the highest podium, High Lord Vareth, a towering, four-armed Threxian, smirked down at Reed. His voice, filled with amusement, boomed through the chamber. "The humans have come to plead their worth again?" Vareth sneered. "Tell me, Captain, why should we even consider your species as equals? You are frail. You lack strength. You lack power. Even your homeworld is a fragile blue rock barely clinging to life." The assembled alien leaders erupted into laughter. Reed stood still, his gaze locked on Vareth. He didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply waited. Vareth continued, reveling in the attention. "We have heard of your so-called resilience. Your primitive warriors and your insignificant battles. But let us be clear, your people are nothing more than an anomaly, a biological accident. You do not belong among the great races of the galaxy." More laughter. Reed exhaled slowly. He'd been sent here on a diplomatic mission, but now he understood the truth: this wasn't diplomacy. This was a test. And the fools didn't even realize they had already failed. Just as Vareth prepared to continue his speech, another alien stepped forward, an Eldranian strategist, known for their cold logic and advanced warfare. His glowing eyes flickered with skepticism. "Then why are the Zarvok afraid of them?" he asked, silencing the room. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Zarvok, the most feared species in the galaxy, were known for their brutality, having wiped out entire star systems. If they feared humans, there had to be a reason. Vareth scoffed. "My dear strategist, fear is relative. The Zarvok have been irrational as of late. Surely, you do not believe these creatures pose any real threat?" The Eldranian tilted his head. "Then why not prove it?" Silence. Then, a sinister grin formed on Vareth's face. "Very well. Since the humans believe they are strong, let us give them a challenge." He gestured toward Reed. "We will hold a trial of survival. If your people endure, then perhaps, we will reconsider your place in this galaxy. But if you fail, humanity will be forever seen as nothing more than a joke." More laughter. Reed finally spoke. His voice was calm. Measured. "A trial?" he asked. "Yes," Vareth said smugly. "A test of endurance. A test of true strength. We will place you where no weak creature could possibly survive." Reed smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a forced one. But the kind of smile that made the aliens pause. "Fine," he said. "But when this is over, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember your laughter. Because when the dust settles, the galaxy will finally learn the truth about us." The hall fell silent. And for the first time, the aliens watching began to feel something they never expected to feel toward humans. Unease. The transport ship shuddered as it broke through the storm-choked atmosphere of Veralis 7, a planet infamous for being one of the most inhospitable worlds in the galaxy. Razor-sharp winds howled outside, cutting through the sky like invisible blades. Towering mountain ranges, jagged and unwelcoming, stretched endlessly beneath an apocalyptic storm. It was a world that had broken the most resilient warriors. A world where survival was measured not in days, but in hours. Inside the ship, Captain Reed and his team, 6 carefully selected humans, stood calm, their expressions unreadable. Across from them, a delegation of alien observers watched, waiting for cracks to appear. One of them, a Threxian officer, sneered. "You are the first humans to step onto Veralis 7. You will not last the night." Reed didn't react. He simply glanced at his team, exchanging silent looks. They already understood each other. Then the transport's doors slammed open, and the freezing air roared inside like a hungry beast. "Welcome to your trial," the officer mocked. "Good luck, human." With that, the humans stepped out onto death itself. The alien spectators. From high above, in a galactic observation station, representatives from multiple species watched the event unfold in real time. Enormous holographic screens displayed various camera angles, capturing every moment of humanity's struggle. Among them was High Lord Vareth, seated at the center of the viewing deck, his sharp-toothed grin unwavering. "Shall we place bets?" one alien chuckled. "They will break within 6 hours," another said confidently. But among them sat a silent observer, the Eldranian strategist, who had first questioned humanity's weakness. His glowing eyes flickered as he analyzed the humans' movements. "They do not seem afraid." "Why?" "The first hours, the alien test." As soon as they landed, Reed and his team assessed their surroundings. They were standing on the edge of a vast canyon, where icy winds howled through jagged ravines. The temperature was dropping fast, nearing lethal levels. To the watching aliens, this was the first test. Test of endurance, the temperature would plunge below freezing. The humans would suffer frostbite, hypothermia, and collapse. Test of panic, the unfamiliar, hostile terrain would make them break mentally before physically. But then, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't panic. Instead, Reed took one deep breath and calmly issued orders. "Gabe, take point. Find shelter. Evelyn, assess wind patterns, tell me how long before a full whiteout. Harris, inventory check." Without hesitation, his team moved like a machine, each member knowing exactly what to do. The aliens watching frowned. This wasn't the erratic, desperate scrambling they had expected. This was organization. Within 20 minutes, the humans had found a natural cave formation, blocked off the entrance with thermal barriers made from their own gear, and had already started a fire using nothing but friction and ingenuity. To the aliens, this should have been impossible. No species adapted this fast. The second wave, the planet fights back. Vareth smirked. "So they have lasted an hour. No matter. The storm will handle them." As if answering his words, the wind outside howled louder, and the sky turned a deep, unnatural black. Within moments, Veralis 7's true nature revealed itself. A monstrous storm system descended upon the canyon. Thunder cracked like a war drum. Razor hail, shards of ice sharp enough to slice through metal, began raining down in brutal waves. The aliens watching relaxed. This was it. The humans were trapped. Their pathetic little fire wouldn't last. But inside the cave, Reed merely smirked. "All right, let's get to work." Then the unthinkable happened. Instead of waiting for the storm to pass, the humans moved into action. They reinforced the cave with rock formations, turning it into an unbreakable shelter. They layered their clothing for insulation, keeping body heat stable. They set up a watch system, ensuring no one succumbed to exhaustion. And then, they rested. This was the most terrifying part for the watching aliens. Other species would be panicking, using up energy in a desperate attempt to flee or find better shelter. The humans? They slept. They trusted their system, trusted each other, and simply endured. It was then that the first whispers of unease spread through the Galactic Senate. They aren't struggling," one alien murmured. "They are adapting," another said, voice low. Varetha's smirk twitched slightly. Something was wrong. The third wave, the true challenge. The aliens realized something horrifying: the storm wasn't killing the humans. It was making them stronger. The longer the humans endured, the more efficient they became. They rationed food with mathematical precision. They adjusted their sleeping shifts based on body temperature patterns. Instead of being broken by the environment, they were learning from it. Vareth clenched his fists. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This is meaningless, he growled. We must see how they fare against a true threat. At his command, a group of war beasts, massive, armored predators native to Veralis, 7, were released into the canyon, programmed to hunt the humans. The Senate held its breath. Would the humans flee? Would they panic? No. They did something far worse. They prepared. And when the beasts came, the humans didn't run. They fought. And in less than an hour, they had done something no other species had ever done before. They tamed the monsters. The storm had passed, leaving behind a frozen wasteland of jagged ice and shattered stone. The war beasts, massive, predatory creatures engineered for survival, now stood obediently around the humans, their once feral eyes betraying something almost like recognition. In the observation deck high above Veralis, 7, the Galactic senators watched in stunned silence. The humans had done the impossible. They had not only survived. They had adapted. And now, they had conquered the very creatures meant to kill them. Varetha's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. His once amused grin had vanished. This wasn't supposed to happen. Unacceptable, he muttered. This changes nothing. They are still a primitive, inferior species. The Eldranian strategist, however, leaned forward in his seat, his glowing eyes narrowing. They tamed apex predators in less than a day, he said. No other species has ever done that. You don't find that concerning? Vareth waved a dismissive hand. Parlor tricks. Luck. Nothing more. And then, alarms began to blare. A crimson glow washed over the observation deck. Warning sirens shrieked through the corridors. Senators and high-ranking officials leaped from their seats, eyes wide with panic. The Zarvok were here. The enemy arrives. The Zarvok were nightmares given form. No one knew where they had come from. No one knew why they waged war. They only knew that every world the Zarvok set foot on was left in ruins. And now, they had found Veralis, 7. Hundreds of Zarvok warships dropped out of hyperspace, their dark, insect-like hulls blotting out the sky. They moved like predators, silent, methodical, hunting. Varetha's expression crumbled into horror. No, 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 he hissed. They weren't supposed to be here. The system was supposed to be secure. The alien senators panicked. Some screamed for evacuation. Others demanded reinforcements. But one thing became clear within seconds: the fleet was too far away. There was no time. The Zarvok were already landing. And down below, the humans had no idea. First contact, humanity stands alone. Inside their makeshift camp, Reed's team had just begun preparing for extraction when they heard it, a deep, unnatural hum vibrating through the air. They turned their heads to the sky. And saw fire. Zarvok dropships descended like falling meteors, crashing into the frozen canyon with earth-shaking force. Dozens of them. The war beasts howled in terror and fled into the night, abandoning their newfound human masters. Reed narrowed his eyes. We're not alone anymore, he said grimly. Then the Zarvok emerged. Towering creatures clad in chitinous black armor, their jagged mandibles clicking hungrily. Their 4 glowing eyes swept across the landscape, locking onto the humans. Assessing. Calculating. Then, one of them spoke. Harvest the weak. The first wave attacked. The first clash, the galaxy watches in horror. From the Galactic observation deck, the senators watched in real time as the Zarvok swarmed the human team. They expected slaughter. What they got was something else entirely. The humans didn't run. They didn't break. They charged. Gabe slammed his rifle into a Zarvok's head, shattering its armored carapace. Evelyn dodged under razor-sharp claws, drew her combat knife, and rammed it into a Zarvok's throat, twisting until the creature fell. Harris pulled a detonator from his belt, hurled it into a cluster of aliens, and detonated a makeshift trap they had set hours earlier, one meant for war beasts, but now serving a much greater purpose. The Zarvok hesitated. This wasn't how prey was supposed to act. This wasn't how any species was supposed to react. Humans should have run. Should have begged. Should have died screaming. Instead, they were fighting back. Terror spreads among the Zarvok. In the skies above, Zarvok commanders watched the battle unfold. They are resisting, one hissed, confused. No species resists this long, another muttered. They should be dead. Yet they weren't. The humans weren't just resisting. They were adapting. Every second, they moved faster. More efficiently. They started predicting Zarvok attacks, adjusting their formation in real time. Then, the real horror set in. The humans were learning. One by one, the Zarvok began to fall. And for the first time in recorded history, the Zarvok did something they had never done before. They hesitated. The galaxy's perspective, a nightmare unfolds. Back in the observation deck, the alien senators were speechless. This was no longer a test of survival. This was something else. The humans had no fleet. No reinforcements. No advanced weaponry. Yet they were winning. Vareth stood, his breath ragged. Impossible. The Eldranian strategist exhaled slowly, his hands steepled. You see it now, don't you? He murmured. It's not that humans are strong. It's not even that they're fast. He turned his glowing gaze toward Vareth. It's that they refuse to lose. And at that moment, every species watching finally understood why the Zarvok feared humanity. The final stand, humanity's defining moment. The battle reached its peak. Reed and his team were exhausted, but they refused to fall. Refused to surrender. But they were outnumbered. Badly. The Zarvok leader stepped forward, towering over Reed, mandibles clicking. Enough. Submit. You have lost. Reed, bleeding, battered, and barely standing, grinned. Funny, he rasped. I was about to say the same thing to you. Then, in the sky above, hyperspace ruptured. Human warships arrived. And for the first time in history, the Zarvok weren't hunting. They were being hunted. The battlefield was silent. Not because the war was over. Not because the enemy had been defeated. But because for the first time in history, the Zarvok were retreating. Their warships, vast, insectoid things that had blotted out the sky, were turning away, their thrusters burning white-hot as they abandoned Veralis 7. The surviving ground troops, once relentless and bloodthirsty, now scrambled to flee, their chitinous limbs clicking in fear. And the entire galaxy was watching it happen. In the Galactic Senate's observation deck, the alien dignitaries sat frozen, their eyes glued to the holographic feeds displaying the battle. No one spoke. No one moved. Because no one could comprehend what they had just seen. The aftermath, the human enigma. Down on Veralis 7, Captain Reed's team stood in silence, watching the last Zarvok dropships vanish into the stormy sky. They had won. But it wasn't victory that weighed on Reed's mind. It was what came next. His earpiece crackled. A familiar voice, Admiral Caldwell, came through, steady but laced with urgency. "Captain, we just arrived in system. We're tracking the Zarvok retreating to deep space. Stand by for extraction." Reed exhaled slowly. He knew what that meant. The Zarvok had marked humanity as a threat, and threats weren't left alone for long. But before he could respond, another voice cut through. Not from his earpiece. From above. "Captain Reed." Reed looked up at the sky, where a massive holographic projection had appeared, a live transmission from the Galactic Senate. And seated at its center was High Lord Vareth, his face tight with something that looked far too much like fear. "What, are you?" Vareth asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Reed didn't answer right away. He simply watched Vareth, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of what had just happened settle in. Then, finally, he spoke. "We're human. The Senate's dilemma, ally or eliminate." Back in the observation deck, chaos erupted. Senators shouted over one another, their voices a mix of fear, disbelief, and urgent strategy. "This cannot be ignored," one alien bellowed. "They defeated the Zarvok. No one has ever done that. And they did it without reinforcements," another added. "Without a fleet. Without superior weapons." A Ziran diplomat, his gills flaring in agitation, turned to Vareth. "If they can do this, what else are they capable of?" That was the question everyone feared to ask. Because the answer was terrifying. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of war. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the most advanced. But they were something worse, a species that simply refused to break. And now, the galaxy faced a choice. Ally with them, or preemptively destroy them before they became unstoppable. The Secret Council, the betrayal begins. Hours later, in a darkened chamber deep within the Senate's core, a private meeting was held. Only the most powerful figures in the galaxy were present. Vareth sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Around him, shadowed figures murmured in hushed voices. "This is an unprecedented event," one said. "Humanity cannot be left unchecked. We must act before it is too late." But the Eldranian strategist, who had been silent until now, leaned forward, his glowing eyes calm. "Too late for what?" he asked. The others turned to him, confused. He steepled his fingers, exhaling slowly. "You assume they will turn against us. That they will conquer. But have they?" "Not yet," one of the diplomats muttered. "They fought because they were forced to," the strategist continued. "They did not attack first. They did not seize power. They merely survived." A long pause followed. Then Varetha's voice, low and venomous, cut through the room. "And what happens when they stop merely surviving, and start fighting to win?" Silence. Then, slowly, one by one, heads nodded. A decision had been made. Humanity was too dangerous. They would have to be eliminated. Humanity's next move, Reed's warning. On board the UHS Valor, the flagship of the human fleet, Captain Reed stood before a high-ranking assembly of officers and scientists. He didn't waste time. "We have a problem," he said, his voice even. The room fell silent. The aliens weren't laughing anymore. You all saw their faces. They don't understand us. And when people don't understand something, they fear it. And when they fear it, he let the words hang in the air. They try to destroy it. Admiral Caldwell folded his arms, nodding grimly. Agreed. The question is, what do we do about it? Reed exhaled. We do what we've always done. He turned, looking at the holographic map of the galaxy. We survive. The council chamber was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of High Lord Varetha's claws against the obsidian table. Around him, the most powerful leaders of the galaxy sat in the dim glow of the holographic war map, their expressions grim. "It has been decided," Vareth finally said, his voice devoid of amusement. "Humanity will not be given the chance to rise." A murmur of agreement swept through the room. "Their fleet is still small," a Ziran warlord muttered. "Their colonies few. If we act now, we can end this before they truly become a threat." "It must be swift," a Threxian general added. "A precise strike. No survivors. No warnings." Vareth turned his gaze to the Eldranian strategist, whose glowing eyes remained unreadable. "And what of you?" Vareth asked. "You were the one who first questioned their weakness. Do you stand with us?" The strategist held Varetha's gaze for a long moment. Then, finally, he gave the smallest of nods. "I stand with survival." Varetha's smirk returned. "Then let us make sure humanity does not." The order was given. The first attack had begun. The first strike, the ambush at Epsilon 4. The UHS Endeavour, a human research vessel, drifted peacefully in orbit above Epsilon 4, a distant colony world. Dr. Alison Vega stood on the observation deck, gazing at the swirling blue clouds of the planet below. "Imagine," she murmured to herself, "a world untouched. A fresh start for humanity." A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The voice of the ship's AI, Aegis, came over the intercom. "Dr. Vega, we are receiving an incoming transmission, but there is no source." Vega frowned. "No source?" Suddenly, alarms blared. The windows of the observation deck darkened as shadows passed over them. A fleet of alien warships had dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons primed. The first strike had come. And humanity never saw it coming. A massacre unfolds, the trap is set. In the skies above Epsilon 4, the first human casualties of the war began to fall. Alien warships descended like vultures, their plasma cannons tearing through human structures and defenses with ruthless precision. Entire cities were burned to the ground before the first human fighters even scrambled to respond. The UHS Endeavour, unarmed and defenseless, was the first to be targeted. Dr. Vega barely had time to scream as the first orbital barrage struck. Her final thought before the flames consumed her was a single, devastating realization. They had never planned to negotiate. This was not a warning. This was extermination. Humanity's response, the impossible escape. Across the galaxy, human military outposts received the same, chilling transmission. Epsilon 4 has fallen. No survivors. Admiral Caldwell stood in the war room aboard the UHS Valor, staring at the transmission feed in silence. Around him, officers muttered in disbelief. An unprovoked attack? They didn't even issue demands. They mean to wipe us out. Caldwell's hands tightened into fists. "Get me Captain Reed. Now." The moment the call connected, Reed's face appeared on the holoscreen. "Sir?" Caldwell didn't hesitate. "The war has started." Reed's expression darkened. "Then we finish it. The secret human weapon, the counterstrike begins." The Alien War Council had made one fatal miscalculation. They had assumed humanity would panic. That they would scatter. That they would be too weak to mount a defense. But humanity did what it always did. It adapted. Within hours, human fleets had gone dark, retreating into the depths of space. The alien warlords believed this was a sign of surrender. They were wrong. Because Reed's team had just activated something the galaxy had never seen before. A weapon not of power, but of strategy. Guerrilla warfare. For the first time in history, the hunters had become the hunted. And the aliens had no idea what was coming next. The galactic warlords had expected a swift victory. They had envisioned human colonies burning, fleets shattered, and Earth itself reduced to a memory before humanity could even react. They were wrong. Because instead of surrendering, humanity vanished. Entire battalions of soldiers disappeared into the void. Warships that should have been easy to track left no trace. The colonies that had not been destroyed went silent. For the first time in history, a species refused to play by the rules of war. And now, the hunters were the hunted. Phase 1, the Shadow War begins. Aboard the UHS Valor, Admiral Caldwell and Captain Reed stood in the war room, staring at a massive holomap of the galaxy. "They're expecting us to fight like them," Reed said, arms crossed. "They expect a fleet-on-fleet engagement. They want us to line up like idiots and get slaughtered." Caldwell nodded grimly. "Then we don't give them that." He turned to the assembled officers, his voice hard as steel. "We will not fight on their terms. We will not meet them head-on. We will not be predictable." He zoomed in on the map, highlighting key supply routes, communication hubs, and strategic outposts controlled by the enemy alliance. "We take their fuel. We take their supply chains. We cut them off from their own forces." A hush fell over the room as humanity's new strategy became clear. No grand battles. No declarations. We bleed them dry. We become their worst nightmare. We become the thing they fear most, a ghost they cannot fight. The officers nodded in unison. The first human war had begun. And humanity was going to win. Phase 2, the first strikes. Across the galaxy, the war took a turn that no one, not even humanity's greatest allies, could have expected. The Threxian Grand Fleet, once believed to be unstoppable, lost half its fuel reserves overnight when human operatives sabotaged their supply depots. The Ziran Command Network, responsible for coordinating thousands of warships, collapsed after a single human AI virus infiltrated their systems. The Eldranian strategist, watching from the shadows, whispered only one thing as he reviewed the destruction. "They aren't fighting for power. They're fighting for survival. And that makes them unstoppable." Phase 3, the psychological war. It started with whispers. Among alien soldiers stationed across the war front, rumors spread like wildfire. "Have you heard what the humans did to the Ziran fleet? They say a human task force infiltrated a Threxian battle station and wiped out every officer inside, without firing a shot. A single human pilot took out an entire dreadnought squadron. Alone." The warlords dismissed the stories at first. Until the fear became real. Entire alien squadrons refused to enter human-controlled space. Commanders hesitated before launching attacks, paranoid that they were walking into a trap. Because the truth was worse than the rumors. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were winning. And no one could understand how. The turning point, the galaxy's fear. High Lord Vareth stood before the Galactic War Council, his expression carved from stone. "This is unacceptable," he growled. The other warlords were silent. "Where are our victories?" Vareth demanded. "Where is the overwhelming force that was promised?" No one answered. Because the truth was staring them in the face. Humanity had turned the war into a battle of endurance. And no species in the galaxy was built for endurance like humans. Vareth clenched his fists. "Fine," he hissed. "If they will not surrender, we will force them to kneel." He turned to the warlords, his eyes burning with rage. "We go to Earth. The final stand, Earth's fate." The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history moved toward Earth. Thousands of warships. Millions of soldiers. A force so overwhelming that no world could possibly stand against it. And yet, as the fleet approached the Sol system, a single human transmission was broadcast across all channels. It was Captain Reed's voice. "You came all this way thinking we would kneel. You came thinking you could break us. The aliens on the fleet listened in silence. But you forgot something. We are human. And we do not kneel. Then, for the first time in recorded history, the largest fleet in the galaxy was ambushed. Because humanity had been waiting for them. The Galactic Armada loomed over Earth, a fleet so massive it eclipsed the stars. Thousands of warships, Threxian dreadnoughts, Ziran battlecruisers, Eldranian siege platforms, all prepared to deliver the final blow to humanity's homeworld. Inside the command bridge of the High Lord's flagship, Vareth stood tall, his claws curled into the armrest of his throne. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. The fleet's weapons primed, the energy building to an earth-shattering crescendo. But then, something happened. The human fleet appeared. The impossible counterattack. "Impossible," one of Vareth's officers shouted. "Their fleet is too small. They can't hope to win." But Reed had never planned to win through strength. Humanity wasn't fighting for conquest. They were fighting for survival. And survival breeds ingenuity. The UHS Valor led the charge, but the human ships didn't engage directly. Instead, they unleashed something new. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, thousands of unmanned drones, automated, self-learning, and programmed to disrupt enemy systems, swarmed the enemy fleet. Alien warships sputtered, their targeting systems failing. Shields collapsed. Communications cut out. The galaxy had never seen warfare like this before. Because while the aliens had come expecting a battle, humanity had prepared a trap. And now, the galaxy was learning what happens when you push humans too far. The battle for Earth, humanity's true strength. The aliens still outnumbered the humans 20-1. But numbers don't matter when your enemy refuses to break. On the ground, orbital drop pods slammed into Earth's surface, disgorging millions of alien soldiers, the final invasion force. But instead of finding a broken species, they found resistance. Civilians refused to flee. Old men picked up rifles, children helped tend to the wounded, and soldiers fought with everything they had. Because to humanity, this wasn't just a war. It was survival. And that made them more dangerous than any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. The turning point, when fear changed sides. On the warfront, alien commanders began issuing desperate orders. Fall back. We cannot hold against them. Their forces won't die. They just keep coming. It was then that the galaxy finally understood. Humanity didn't fight for power. They didn't fight for dominance. They fought for each other. And that made them unstoppable. Vareth's last stand, the final confrontation. Inside his flagship, Vareth's confidence had turned to fear. His fleet was in shambles. His soldiers were breaking ranks. And then, the alarms blared. A single human transport had breached his flagship's defenses. And at the head of the strike team, Captain James Reed. Vareth snarled, drawing his plasma blade. "You should have stayed in the shadows, human." Reed smirked. "You should have left us alone." The fight was swift and brutal. Vareth was stronger. Faster. But Reed was smarter. More real. Vareth was stronger. Faster. But Reed was smarter. More relentless. And in the end, it was Reed's knife, not Vareth's blade, that found its mark. As the alien warlord collapsed, gasping, Reed knelt beside him. "You thought we were weak," he murmured. "But now you see the truth. Humanity doesn't win by being the strongest. We win because we refuse to lose." Vareth gasped his final breath. And with that, the war was over. The aftermath, a new galactic order. The alien fleets retreated. The war was won. But humanity did not conquer. They did not demand tribute. They did not punish their enemies. Instead, they rebuilt. They helped. And slowly, the galaxy came to understand the true nature of humanity. They were not just warriors. They were survivors. And when given a reason to fight, they could not be stopped. Final lesson, what the galaxy learned. Years later, a new galactic senate convened. At its center, representatives from across the stars sat in uneasy silence. A single Eldranian strategist stood before them, his glowing eyes calm. We once believed humans were weak. We once believed they did not belong among us. He turned to face the gathered leaders. Now, we understand the truth. Humans are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. They are not the most advanced. He paused, letting the silence hang. But they are the only species that never stops fighting. And that is why they are the most dangerous of us all. The chamber fell silent. Because every species in the galaxy knew one thing for certain. You do not start a war with humanity. Because if you do, you will not win.